John Bowlby once asserted, "Human beings are creatures of attachment, and those bonds shape our identity and life's meaning." Yet, in a digital era where love can be ghosted with a single block, have you ever wondered why we're still haunted by questions when someone disappears without explanation? Are we too weak for clinging to hope, anger, or regret over a relationship we thought was over? Behind millions of smartphone screens dimmed by seen receipts lies a chilling truth no one tells you. Avoidant attachment individuals may leave, block you, and vanish into their new lives, but they never truly get away. The only force still binding them is your own heart. Every moment of your anger chains them in guilt. Every wave of your sorrow traps them in regret. Every flicker of hope fuels their pride, convincing them they still matter. They believe they hold the power, but in reality they're prisoners of the emotions you emit. What feels finished for you continues silently in their subconscious until you give permission for the chapter to close completely. Between the ages of 25 and 64, you've known both love and heartbreak. Don't let lingering feelings become the invisible cord pulling you back. Get ready to uncover a deceptively simple secret that flips the control dynamic entirely. An avoidance freedom begins only when you let go. You hold that key every time you resolve your anger, release regret, extinguish lingering hope, and dissolve any hatred. In the instant you shift from emotional entanglement to true neutrality, the real power returns to your hands. This isn't about chasing them down, it's about liberating yourself. When a relationship ends, we often envision the other person shaking off shackles, discarding emotional ties, and soaring into a fresh sky of freedom. Yet for someone with an avoidant attachment style, that belief in freedom is nothing more than a cunning illusion. No matter how thoroughly they block you across every platform, vanish from your life, or claim to be too busy to reply, the freedom they think they possess remains illusory, so long as any emotion lingers in your heart, be it anger, sorrow, hope, or even hatred. Your feelings act as an invisible tether, binding the avoidant to your inner world. They believe they're moving on, but every step they take is guided by signals sent from your heart. Until you fully release those emotions, they cannot truly walk away. Anger is the first strand of this invisible bond. Every time you burn with rage, the avoidant registers it as a self-imposed verdict. They feel guilty for hurting you, for allowing emotions to spiral, for their inability to make amends. Torn between the desire to be free and the weight of guilt, they become escape artists who never dare run far, fearing that the burden of their guilt will drag them back. When you lash out in anger, they may not hear your words, but their bodies tremble under the spike in cortisol and the neural alarms screaming, "Danger of abandonment." They hastily build walls of silence, hoping to flee from your fury. But this only ricochets emotions right back to you, while they continue to feel your wrath like an unhealed wound. Next comes sorrow, a quiet but potent force that rips them apart from within. Each tear you shed, even in private, is etched into their subconscious, like an unerasable recording. They recall the echo of your sighs, feel the loneliness you endure, and are tormented by relentless regret. If only I hadn't let this happen, if only I could have stayed by your side longer. This regret not only keeps them chained emotionally, but also pulls them back into your sorrowful current, preventing any true escape. They flail in avoidance tactics, yet cannot outrun the very pain they once caused. Parallel to anger and sorrow, hope becomes unseen fuel for the avoidance pride. The moment you cling to the possibility of reconciliation, they feel validated, influential, and in control. Silent thoughts like, "Perhaps it will work out next time," or "Maybe things could be different now," recharge their ego as a protective shield, ensuring they don't feel utterly isolated or insignificant. However, this cycle of hope-feeding pride is endless. The greater the hope, the higher the pride, and the deeper the crash when reality hits, driving them to struggle even harder to preserve the illusion of freedom. And if you believe that hatred might sever the bond, you're mistaken. Hatred does not break the invisible string, it thickens the tie even more. When you hate them fiercely, the avoidant assumes they must still matter profoundly to you. "If you hate me this much, I must have been important," they think, stoking their pride and tightening the bond in the process. They may block your number and delete photos, but the conviction that you harbor hatred remains locked in their psyche, preventing them from forgetting. Together, Your emotional waves, anger, sorrow, hope, hatred, form a silent bridge connecting your world to the avoidance. Only once you fully process and release each strand, quelling rage, letting go of sorrow, extinguishing hope for reunion, and laying hatred to rest, can they finally sever all ties. Their freedom doesn't lie in digital blocks or physical distance. True liberation arrives only when you sign the invisible release form, freeing both yourself and them from emotional bondage. That's why an avoidance freedom will forever remain illusory, if even a fragment of attachment still dwells in your heart. They don't crave physical escape as much as they yearn to break free from the emotional chains you hold. And when you reach genuine neutrality, ceasing to revisit memories or feelings related to them, the door swings wide. Only then can the avoidant truly be free, and you reclaim full control over your own life. Once you recognize that their freedom is mere illusion woven from the emotional beats of your heart, a deeper secret emerges. The avoidant never truly leaves. They are silently awaiting every emotional signal you broadcast. The avoidant waits for your emotional reaction. In their absence, the avoidant's autonomy is an elaborate deception. In truth, they operate like a radar, constantly scanning the emotional atmosphere around them. Every step they take, every moment of silence, even their sudden disappearance, is not a spontaneous behavior, but a deliberate reaction to the frequency of your moods. When you stare at the mirror, mind racing with thoughts of breakup, each tight breath through clenched lips, even if you never call their name, they hear you. According to Dr. Alan Shore's research, the avoidance nervous system, particularly the right hemisphere, becomes hyper-attuned to nonverbal emotional cues, such as rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, or sorrowful facial expressions, because this brain region is specialized for processing unspoken emotional information. Thus, when you unconsciously press your hand to your chest or lean your head into your hand, seeking self-comfort, they perceive that pull through invisible waves, no matter how far apart you are. Every time you fall silent, refrain from posting status updates, or ignore messages, they interpret it not as total indifference, but as a silent proclamation: I still matter in your mind. This feeling of being disregarded triggers their defense mechanisms. Yet paradoxically, it also piques their curiosity, prompting them to lurk in hidden corners to observe your next emotional transmission. That is why they might sneak back via an alternate social media account, view your stories without leaving a trace, or scroll through your feed anonymously. They behave like a ghost but are in fact emotional spies, never missing the slightest fluctuation in your inner world. Even in moments of sulking, just a quirk of your lip, a fleeting sadness in your eyes, or a single sigh, they catch it. Much like photons of light carrying messages to your retinas, these pure emotional signals travel the unseen space, reach their neural pathways, and make them tremble despite their calm facade. Psychologist Elliot Aronson once noted, "Humans interpret eye contact and nonverbal signals far more rapidly than spoken words." For the avoidant, that inner radio remains on and tuned in at all times, without an off switch. The operative word here is response. They do not initiate every action, they answer to the signals you send. When you suffer, mournful posts about heartbreak become encrypted messages, alerting them that you still feel pain. They understand they remain influential, still allowed to hurt you, and thus delay complete severance. Conversely, when you begin to heal, no more plaintive tweets, no pictures of loneliness, they read it as a sign you are letting go. Immediately, their internal radar loses signal, and they finally release their hold. Neuroscientist Louis Cozolino emphasizes that when two people bond deeply, their brains form shared neural pathways manifested by synchronized brainwave activity. This synchronization doesn't vanish instantly when the relationship ends. It lingers as an imprint in their neural network. Hence, the avoidant cannot erase your trace simply by deleting contacts. They depart physically, but their brain continues to track signals from those pathways, ever searching for the slightest emotional flicker. They wait for your emotional reaction not out of a desire to return, but as an instinctual survival mechanism. When you wonder in shock at their sudden reappearance after months of silence, it's because they intercepted a signal, perhaps leftover regret or hope. They surface not to comfort you, but to test the extent of their influence in your life. Can they still read your emotional code, still steer your moods? You might establish strict boundaries, no replies, blacklisted numbers. You might seek therapy or devote yourself to self-care. Yet so long as an emotional remnant remains in your soul, however faint, they will continue to observe. Picture this dynamic like an ocean current. Though surface waves may lay still, deep currents churn below, pulling everything back to their center. The avoidant is immune to surface quiet. They submerge themselves from the social forefront but remain ensnared by the emotional undercurrent you generate. The key to breaking this cycle doesn't lie in trying to flee from them, but in altering your own emotional frequency. When you cease broadcasting pain, stop posting tears, relinquish any thread of hope, your inner world goes dark. Their emotional radar loses signal, they catch nothing, and at last are compelled to cut loose. This shift does not depend on their actions, but on the transformation within you. Once you clear every emotional disturbance, you grant them true freedom, because only when you broadcast a zero-frequency signal do they no longer remain bound. Ultimately, understanding that the avoidant listens to you in silence empowers you with real control. Don't wage war to drive them out. Instead, focus on completing your own emotional cycle. When you extinguish all signals, you liberate not just them but yourself, reclaiming inner peace and autonomy. Only then will the bond fully dissolve, restoring both of you to genuine freedom. Once you realize that the avoidant never truly leaves but patiently awaits every emotional signal you send, it's time to delve into the invisible forces that hold them back, namely, the emotions you harbor. In their eyes, every surge of your anger becomes a self-inflicted verdict, burdening the avoidant with overwhelming guilt. When you scream in frustration or sit in brooding silence, they may not decipher your exact words, but their alarm system goes off. I hurt you. That eruption of rage compels them to constantly glance back, wondering if they can ever make amends, and that very guilt prevents them from walking away completely. Your angry gaze is like an unseen lash exposing every fault, scaring them into avoidance, while paradoxically preventing their final departure. Following anger comes your sorrow, a quieter but equally piercing wound. Each tear you shed, every sorrowful sigh, is etched into their subconscious as an unending reminder. Something remains unresolved. This sorrow, unlike the clamor of anger, harbors an unrelenting regret that torments the avoidant, forcing them to relive moments of affection that slipped away. Their self-reproach and that tide of remorse create an inexorable pull, one they simply cannot outrun, no matter how hard they try to vanish. Alongside guilt and regret, the faint spark of your hope fuels their pride. A whispered thought, maybe we can try again, becomes invisible fuel that convinces them they still matter. Your hope transforms into a shield that protects their ego, assuring them of their influence and desirability. It becomes their reason not to disappear entirely. As long as you hold on to hope, a part of them must return to seek that reassurance. Lastly, if you assume hatred will sever the bond, it actually cements their role in your life. When your feelings turn to contempt, the avoidant thinks, if you hate me this much, I must have been important. Hatred isn't a release, it's a reverse tether, affirming that you still care, albeit negatively. Thus, the invisible cord tightens further, for they know they still inhabit your inner world, whether you admit it or not. In summary, your anger saddles them with guilt, your sorrow fills them with regret, your hope fans their pride, and your hatred reaffirms their significance in your heart. Emotions you might use to break free become the very mechanisms that anchor the avoidant, preventing their departure. Only when you fully release each of these, owning your anger, letting sorrow pass, extinguishing hope, and laying hatred to rest, will the bond truly shatter, and the avoidant can finally walk away unbound from your life. Once you have released anger, let sorrow go, extinguished hope, and buried hatred, you stand at the threshold of genuine freedom, not one bound by the avoidance illusions, but defined by a state of emotional neutrality, where no invisible strings tether the two hearts. The key to liberation: emotional neutrality, indifference. Emotional neutrality isn't cold indifference or dismissive apathy. It's a profound tranquility in which you no longer require them to define your worth. When you no longer waver with anger, ache with sorrow, hang on to hope, or even sustain hatred, your heart becomes perfectly still, like a mirror-flat lake, rippled by no breeze. That stillness disrupts the avoidant's internal radar, leaving no signal to track and compelling them to release their hold rather than drift aimlessly in the void. In psychology, neutrality emphasizes balanced non-reactivity, allowing feelings to arise without being driven by emotional extremes. This doesn't mean you suppress or deny your emotions. Rather, you fully process them, granting them permission to emerge, then gracefully fade away. When you truly become neutral, you step out of the orbit of obsession around them, stop revisiting the past, and focus wholeheartedly on your own life's journey. At that precise moment, the invisible contract between you and the avoidant is finally torn apart. This contract existed as the emotional signals you emitted. Once you cease broadcasting any signal, the contract loses its power. The avoidant, who once vigilantly monitored every nuance, suddenly hears nothing and is forced to acknowledge that the binding is broken. Without your broadcast, they will release their hold. No need for you to block them. They will vanish of their own accord. This form of freedom is intrinsic. You are no longer dependent on their reactions to experience peace. You don't wait for them to return, nor long for apologies, nor crave replies to your messages. This is not selfish aloofness. It is a gentle power. You let go to love yourself. By refusing to carry the heavy baggage of past emotions, you reclaim sovereignty over your own life. For the avoidant, this is the true knockout. Months or years of rationalizations, being busy, moving on, cannot mask the fact that their body and mind remain in a state of alert toward you. Once you enter neutrality, they have no target to track. Their radar loses signal instantaneously, prompting them to reassess the bond and disappear forever. They leave not because of your coldness, but because you transcended the emotional framework they enforced. Achieving emotional neutrality demands self-observation, recognizing every nuance in your heart, allowing each feeling to pass without lingering. You might journal, confide in a trusted friend, or practice mindfulness meditation to watch emotions rise and fall without judgment. Over time, as you master your inner world, those tethers become like clouds drifting across the sky, noticeable but not grounding. And in that moment, you free not only the avoidant, but yourself from the shackles of the past. Your life blossoms with new possibilities, deeper connections, broader experiences, and an empowered self. That is true freedom, not the illusion the avoidant once pursued in the haze of ambiguous bonds. Once you achieve complete emotional neutrality, no more ripples within your mind. It's time to explore the hidden biological radar operating in the avoidant, the neural mechanism that prevents them from truly getting away. The underlying biological mechanism. The nervous system of an avoidant individual functions like an ultra-sensitive radar, constantly sweeping for perceived threats, fear of rejection, abandonment, or emotional exposure. Beneath conscious awareness, this system engages brain regions that regulate stress and attachment, notably the amygdala and the limbic network, to instantly detect and respond to any emotional signal you emit. Whenever your heart stirs with anger, sorrow, hope, or even hatred, their amygdala flashes an alarm, triggering a surge of cortisol that activates the fight or flight response, while also engaging old oxytocin pathways that bind them to memories of you. Conversely, when you reach total neutrality, the avoidant's brain receives no emotional data to process. Their radar remains active but silent, like an aircraft losing signal, forcing them to recalibrate their inner frequency. This is starkly different from those with a secure attachment style, whose baseline nervous systems remain generally at ease. The avoidant radar has no off switch. It only quiets when the external emotional environment ceases its broadcast, and the only environment it scans is your internal one. Dr. Stephen Porges, through his polyvagal theory, demonstrates that the ventral vagal complex of the parasympathetic system fosters feelings of safety via nonverbal communication and social engagement. In avoidant individuals, this social parasympathetic branch is perpetually overshadowed by the sympathetic fight or flight response, making lasting tranquility elusive. When your emotional signals cease, their autonomic branches can rebalance, enabling the social parasympathetic system to restart, and that reboot is the trigger for the avoidant to finally release their hold. They are no longer caught between stress and the pull to connect. Moreover, neuroimaging research reveals that deep bonds leave imprints in the prefrontal cortex, the region governing emotional regulation and decision-making. In avoidance, The white matter tracks linking the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala are tenuous due to habitual emotional suppression. Every emotional signal you send strikes these pathways like a jolt, forcing the avoidant to deploy resources to either evade or respond. When you stop entirely, their prefrontal cortex no longer must constantly adjust, it can rest, and the amygdala ceases its overactivation, allowing their nervous system to recover and the compulsion tied to you to dissipate. Chemically, cortisol and adrenaline levels spike in avoidance while they track you, reinforcing the illusion of an ongoing relationship. Conversely, when you remain neutral, their cortisol levels subside, oxytocin no longer surges from bonding cues, and dopamine, the reward neurotransmitter driving dependence, diminishes. As these chemicals return to baseline, their body and brain recognize the cycle has ended, marking the moment they truly let go without residual tension. In sum, the avoidance biology does not allow them to simply walk away. They are governed by a neural radar that relentlessly scans for your emotional signals. Only when those signals vanish, when you achieve full neutrality, does their internal radar fall silent, permitting their nervous system to self-regulate and both of you to be truly free. This is not mere psychological theory, but the real interplay of brain and nervous system, a clear testament that an avoidance freedom is contingent upon the emotional state you emit. Once you have closed the book on every emotional signal, anger, sadness, hope, and hatred that the avoidant once tracked, a brand new chapter opens, the journey of self-liberation, where you finalize the breakup not only in body but in your soul. To truly let them go, the first step is to allow yourself to fully experience each pent-up emotion. Do not shy away from anger, acknowledge its root. Write scorching pages in a journal, or scream in an empty room where you feel safe. By confronting that anger head-on, you strip it of its power over you. Next, let sadness flow freely. Reach out to trusted friends, or simply allow yourself to cry. Every tear serves as a chisel that chips away at the wound until the scar can finally close. Simultaneously, you must intentionally extinguish the spark of hope. Write an unsent letter, stating bluntly, "I am done waiting." Place it in a box, seal it, and put it away as a symbolic act of release. Whenever hope resurfaces, remind yourself, "I have chosen to let go." Finally, neutralize hatred by practicing forgiveness, not because the avoidant deserves your mercy, but because you deserve peace. Tell yourself, "I leave the past behind," and focus on cultivating positive intentions for your future. Next, build a support structure for yourself. Establish daily routines such as mindfulness, meditation, emotional journaling, or physical exercise to discharge any lingering cortisol. As your spirit steadies, past echoes will fade, and memories will no longer ensnare you. Consider seeking professional therapy to gain additional tools and objective perspectives, further strengthening your inner journey. Remember, this process does not unfold overnight. There will be days when a poignant memory or a familiar song stirs longing or frustration. That is perfectly normal. Pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself, "I am moving forward." Each time you do, you reinforce your belief in your capacity to overcome. Ultimately, when your heart attains true serenity, free from turmoil, you will realize you have reclaimed total control. No more waiting, no more inner conflict between resentment and release. In that moment, the avoidant, finally gain freedom, because the invisible bond that once tethered you has been severed. And you too are liberated to embark on a fresh chapter, free to love and be loved in a healthy way, unencumbered by any lingering ties. The journey into the avoidant's hidden motivations reveals that their freedom was never truly their own. It's tethered to the emotions you emit. From anger and sorrow to hope and hatred, each feeling becomes an invisible cord that holds them back, preventing them from stepping out of your mind. Their neural radar continuously scans for your emotional signals, and only when you achieve complete neutrality, when that invisible contract no longer broadcasts, will they finally let go. Yet the ultimate key lies in your hands, completing the breakup within your soul, allowing each anger to be released, every tear to flow, hope to be extinguished, and hatred to be forgiven. By granting yourself this tranquility, you not only free them, but also cleanse yourself of emotional shackle. From that point on, both of you are liberated. They can truly depart, and you can truly move forward. Remember, no one can leave until you give permission, And only when you let go completely can you open the next chapter of your life, crafting a new story of true freedom and lasting happiness.